Hey, and welcome to Bible 365. It's so quiet out here today. I'm used to it being louder. So welcome to 365, and today is day 94. So on your calendar, it is April 3rd, and we are doing Judges 9:22 through 11:28. So if you've never been here before, this is the first time you are seeing these videos. I'm reading through the Bible every day for the next year. Started January 1st, and here we are in April. And I am just giving my thoughts every day. So what I read, what I think about it, I try to give a synopsis over what I read because it's a lot. It's usually in the neighborhood of like 2 to 3 chapters. And so to help understand what we, where we are, where we've been, and then why it matters where we are, I try and give a little bit of a synopsis so I can, so collectively we can understand what's going on. So what I want you to do is, if you are watching this, I want you to read your Bible first. And so that's why I tell you where we are, the chapters that we're in. If you don't read, I always say that's okay. I'm hoping that this will eventually encourage you to read, that this really isn't just about listening to what I have to say, but it's about being excited about hearing all of these things to the point where you want to read it yourselves. And I feel like that's kind of the longer I've been in I don't want to say ministry, but the longer I've been doing this, the more surprised I am that nobody really wants to read. But maybe people don't enjoy reading in general. But there's so much to be gained by reading it. There are so many small details in there that that you may have never seen before, and you may have read it 5, 6, 7, 8 times already. Who knows? Or you may have heard your pastor read that same passage over and over and over again. Yet when you read it, God might bring something to the forefront that you have just never seen before or heard before. That might help you just in your life at that moment, and that's one of those things that firms up your relationship with God, and so that you know He's there, you know that He's listening, and you know that He loves you. So, all that being said, like I said, I want you to read first, and we are in the book of Judges, and the book of Judges is still in the Old Testament. It follows the book of Deuteronomy, Deuteronomy was written by Moses, and they are the first 5 books of the Old Testament. And we finished all those, so now we've kind of moved on to Judges, and this is where actually it follows the book of Joshua. It doesn't follow the book of Judges, it follows the book of Joshua, who brought the Israelites, those 12 tribes of Israel, into the land of Canaan. They went to war, they took over most of the land, but not all of it. They left a remnant of people in just about every single land. So the tribe broke up the land into 12 pieces, some on the inside of Israel, some on the other side of the Jordan. And so it's out in the territory now, which is kind of like Syria, Jordan, a little bit up in Lebanon. And so they left a little bit of all of the other people that were living there. They left them living there. And that is creating a lot of friction between the people. And this is also not what God wanted from them. So God wanted them to take out everyone, and He wanted them to live in this land as the people of Israel. He wanted them to continue to follow Him. And those are all things that they didn't do. So we've had some judges come up. And so what they do is people are crying out. They stop listening to God. They turn away from God. Everything gets real dark, gets real evil. They turn to other gods. And then they're overwhelmed. They are usually either captive or they're oppressed, or, wars happen. And then they're miserable, and then they cry out to the Lord. And then the Lord takes one person. He raises that person up, and that person leads the area, takes over. And then there's a time of peace with the Israelites for, well, maybe prosperity is a better word. Maybe it's not necessarily peace, but prosperity for the Israelites, as long as that judge is alive. And then as soon as that judge dies, they tend to fall in this cycle all over again. So if we're starting in the beginning, we are in Judges 9. We finished up about the first half of Judges 9 yesterday, and we met Abimelech. So Abimelech is so Gideon was a judge. Abimelech is one of Gideon's sons. He was by a concubine, and he rose up and he took over and then killed all of his brothers. There were 70 brothers, and he had himself and he had other people kill all those brothers, and he took on the leadership of Israel. And then he killed all but one. The youngest brother is still alive, and the youngest brother pronounced a curse on the people, and he said that he wants Abimelech to die, and then the people of Shechem as well, because they chose Abimelech over all of the other brothers, which were Gideon's brothers. So we're moving into Judges 9:22. So going into that very first verse in 9:22. Hopefully you got a little bit of the gist of where we've been and what's happening. So in 9:22 it says, after Abimelech, so Abimelech is now in charge, after Abimelech had governed Israel 3 years, God stirred up animosity between him and the citizens of Shechem. So the citizens of Shechem are the people who picked him, and now God kind of stirs the pot a little bit. And so the people of Shechem start robbing anyone who comes into the territory. So they're like hiding in places, and then when new people come in, they rob them. I mean, obviously that doesn't go well for anyone in the land. And so they rob them, take their stuff, kill people, and then so it stirs up a little bit of animosity and anger between those people. And so they need to, it says, so in verse 26, someone moves into the area. His name is Gal, and he moves into the area, and he's like, this guy is a horrible leader. He's letting all these things happen. If I were the leader, these are all the things that I would do. I would take him out. I would take control. I would run the land and all these other things, right? So he would do a good thing. Well, the governor in the land, Zebul, heard it, went back and told Abimelech, and he was like, here's what you should do. You should come in at night. You should hide. You should be real sneaky. And then the next morning, you should come down and you should kill everybody in that area. So Shechem, essentially, the people of Shechem, have turned on Abimelech, right? And they're sort of, I guess it's like Abimelech, I mean, not Abimelech, sorry, Gal came in and he sort of divided the people a little bit. So like he's made some divisions. So now instead of completely following Abimelech as they were, now they're sort of separated into groups. So some of them follow Abimelech, some of them are now sort of following Gal, hoping Gal can take charge and lead the people. And so Zebul went back and told Abimelech. Abimelech comes in, and he's real sneaky, so he's kind of hiding in the mountains. And then Gal comes out to the edge of the territory, and he was like, looks like there's people coming out there. And Zebul's like, no, what are you talking about? That's not people, it's just shadows. Well, then he starts to figure out that it is actually people, and the people come in, and they come in and they kill Gal. They chase him down, and they kill him. So I want to go to verse 46. So after they killed him, then they're and so they've killed a lot of the people in Shechem as well, which again are Abimelech's people, but they were people that were following Gal. And then a bunch of them hide in this tower. It says 1,000 people hide in this tower, and Abimelech and all of his people start carrying wood to the tower and set the whole tower on fire with them in it. And so they killed about 1,000 women, men, women, and children in that tower as well. After that, he then moves on to a different town and conquers a different town. So I'm just going to read 46 and then 50. So in 46, this is when he says, on hearing this, that the citizens were hiding, they went to the stronghold of the temple of El Berith. When Abimelech heard that they have assembled there, he and his men went up the mountain. They took an axe and cut off some branches, and then they set everything on fire. So it says, all the people in the tower of Shechem, about 1,000 men and women, also died. Then he went to Tebez and besieged it and captured it. Inside the city, however, so he's trying to repeat this over again. So here we go, there's a tower in there as well. So once again, he tries to kill everyone inside this tower. But this time, a woman who is in the top of the tower drops a millstone on his head and cracks his head open. It seems like he didn't die, mostly dead. Feels like very, what is that? The Princess Bride. So he's mostly dead, but he's not completely dead. And so he says to one of his people, I don't want people to think that a woman killed me, so I want you to kill me. So he dies by, I mean, the story is still in there. So I guess it's shameful to have been killed by a woman, but I would say that woman was brave for choosing to risk her life and to kill Abimelech, who was doing things that were evil. Anyway, so he wound up dying, and we still know that a woman killed him. We still realize that a woman dropped a millstone from the top. And then in the end, in verse 56, it says, thus God repaid the wickedness that Abimelech had done to his father by murdering his 70 brothers. Remember that curse that Jotham puts on him. God also made the people of Shechem pay for all their wickedness. So if you remember that they died. The curse of Jotham, son of Gideon, came on them. So this is how we end, not today, but this is how we end Abimelech's reign. Even though Abimelech was wicked, it still seems like he was a judge, but I'm not 100% sure. Because what happens is after this, a couple of judges come up. So what we see right after that is in Judges 10:1, we see another guy comes up. So it says, after the time of Abimelech, a guy from Issachar comes and he leads. He's from the country of Ephraim, and he leads for 23 years, and then he dies. So we don't really hear too much about that. And then immediately after that, we have a guy named Jair of Gilead, who was 22 years. He had 30 sons. They rode on 30 donkeys. They managed 30 towns. So that's all we hear about them. So that, again, maybe not super eventful in the grand scheme of things. And then we move on to verse 6. It says, again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. They served the Baals and the Ashtaroths and the gods of Aram, the gods of Sidon, the gods of Moab, the gods of Ammonites, and the gods of the Philistines. So listen, I think I've gone over this a little bit, but maybe not. This word evil is being used. And I know I've said before, some of the importance of what they're doing is they're turning away from God, right? And they're turning towards other gods. But he says they do evil in the sight of the Lord. And I think in our brains, we have an idea of what evil means. So we probably think something like this. They murder babies. They rape and pillage towns. They murder for no reason other than they just feel like it, right? Like, so like it looks like maybe it looks like a wild west town where the women can't leave their homes because so much is happening. That's actually not the description of evil. I'm not saying those things aren't evil, so I don't mishear what I'm saying. I'm not saying those things aren't evil, but that's actually not the description that God seems to give of evil. When he says evil, it's they turn from him towards somebody else, right? So they're turning away from God and towards somebody else. And I know this I've said on multiple occasions. Crows. This I've said on multiple occasions because I think it's important to understand that we all seem to think that we recognize what evil is. Well, if evil comes in front of me, then I know what evil is. And then therefore, if it's not evil, then it's good. How can God say this is evil or God say this is good? Because if you turn away from God and the things God says, that's evil. So I know it sounds in one of the many things that I've said over these recordings that sounds a little bit uncomfortable when I say it out loud, because I think that's not evil. Evil is breaking the law. Evil is uh, going in at this time, unfortunately, going in and doing something disastrous to schools or those things are evil, right? Touching illegal people, like that's evil. But that's not what God says is evil. And again, I don't want to say that's not evil, because I'm sure those people who are doing those things are not honoring God, right? Because God says not to do those things. However, just because you don't honor God doesn't mean you do those things, but it does mean that he calls you evil, because what you are doing is you're turning away from him and you're turning towards something else. So again, I know this is something I've said a couple of times, maybe in a few different ways, but I want to be very clear that our God, the ones that, for those of you who are listening and who follow this God, our God says, if you turn from me, you are doing evil, right? He doesn't say if you kill people, you're doing evil. He says, if you turn from me, you are doing evil, right? So he does, again, reiterating some of those things. I don't want to go too deep into it. So I just want to be careful that when we see the word evil, we don't imagine it's somebody dressed like the devil, wringing their hands, right? Being ready to slaughter the next person that walks into town. Because then you say to yourself, well, that's not me. I'm not doing that. I am super nice to my neighbors. I bring people meals when they don't feel well. The list can go on and on about the good things that I do. We have to be careful of what God says is evil. We have to be careful of what he says is good, right? Following him good, not following him evil. So we can answer any of those questions of, when God says I'm evil, why would he say that? Because you have turned away from him and you have turned towards your own lusts, designs, your own gods. All right. So moving on in this. So here we go. They have turned to evil. So this is what we know about the people. So the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and they served all these other gods. He became angry with them, and then he sold them in the hands of the Philistines and the Amorites, etc. And then these people came in and they just shattered them. They crushed the Israelites. So this was a really bad one. I'm sure others weren't great as well, but this one he's noting they've just destroyed the people. 18 years they oppressed the Israelites on the east side of the Jordan, and then some of them crossed over to fight even more. So they fought Judah, Benjamin, Ephraim, and so it says they're in great distress. And then here's what they cry out. They say, "We have sinned against you, forsaking our God and serving the Baals or other gods," right? So we have sinned against you by turning from you and serving somebody else. And you know what God says this time? Too much. Too late. That's it. I'm done with you people. You say this to me all the time. You keep coming back. You keep showing yourself. You keep saying, forgive me. And he says, no, I'm done. And then they keep crying out. And they keep crying out. And then he gives in. So he has made the promise with these people. And I don't want you to attribute what I'm saying with humanness, right? We have, as a people group, they have, these Israelites, because I don't want to go to I don't want to go into today, but as a people group, these Israelites have broke the covenant with the Lord so many times, over and over and over again. And his patience is so great with these people. He has saved them. He has given them over to all of these. Even when they say, you know what, I'm done with you, he says, okay, then you be done with me, right? So like he's even allowing them, like when we have this whole discussion of what he will force us to do, or what's necessarily part of his plan, when we choose to turn away, he lets us go, because that's our choice to make. And he says, that's on you. You have chosen to do that. And when you come begging me, I have always been there for you, because I have a promise with you. But this time he says no. But like I said, they keep asking, and he relents. Sorry, I hope this isn't a funky break. My mic completely conked out while I was recording. So, all right, so we are in the end of, this is when he says, so he tells them to go, let their other gods handle them. And of course they don't. However, he does relent. So it says in verse 16, it says, and he could hear Israel's misery no longer, which means he's going to relent and he's going to give them someone. So then we come down to, and they all get ready for war. And as they're getting ready for war, they say, whoever is willing to lead us, because right now they don't have a leader. So whoever is willing to lead us, we're going to put you in charge of Israel after that, right? So you're going to be a kind of like our all over leader from here on out. So then we move into Judges 11. So in the very beginning of this is when we meet our next judge. So we meet Jephthah. He was a Gileadite. Sounds weird. But he was a mighty warrior. So he was really strong and he was really good at what he did. However, he had some baggage, I guess we could say. So he was the son of someone from Gilead, but he was the daughter of a prostitute. And so because he was the daughter of the prostitute, the brothers actually sent him away. So they didn't want to be brothers with him. He was obviously like a stain on their family. And so they sent him away. And so he started hanging out. I feel like this sort of reminds us of Abimelech. He started hanging out with scoundrels, which again is another funny word. The same funny word that we use with Abimelech. So he started hanging out with people that weren't so bad. However, he was a good warrior. And so they reached out to him. And he said, so the elders reached out and they said, we're turning to you in verse 8. Come with us to fight the Ammonites, and you'll be head over all of us that live in Gilead, which is where he's originally from. And then he says, will that really happen? And then he said, the Lord is their witness. And then he takes all this to the Lord. So we see Jephthah taking all this to the Lord, and he sort of makes the promise with the Lord to do this. So then he sends, something banged back there. So then he sends messengers to the king of the Ammonites. And he said, why are you coming after us? Have I done something to you? And the guy says, he reaches back and he said, listen, you took our land. And so we just want it back. If you give it back peacefully, then all will be good and we'll kind of leave it alone. And then Jephthah starts reciting Israelite history. So here we go with some of the reasons for having this history, because he reminds the Ammonites of what happened and why. So he goes back into what for us would have been Deuteronomy. So with Moses, before Moses died, all the land that was taken, actually maybe even Numbers and Deuteronomy. So all that land that was taken on the other side of the Jordan. So not in the land of Canaan, but on the other side of the Jordan. And so he goes in and he repeats all these things to him, tells him all the things and the reasons that it was taken. And he said, if God gave this to us, then it's ours. And he said, you reach out to your God and see if your God will give that up to you. So this is in, I'm going to read verse 23 because it says, now, since the Lord, this is what Jephthah is saying, since the Lord, the God of Israel, has driven the Amorites out before his people, Israel, what right do you have to take it over? Will you not take what your God Chemosh gives you? Likewise, whatever the Lord God has given us, we will possess. And then he asks if you're better than any of those people in history, Balak, if you remember. And it says then in verse 27, I have not wronged you, but you are doing me wrong by waging war on me. Let the Lord the judge decide the dispute this day between the Israelites and the Ammonites. So Jephthah is giving all of this to God. He's saying, the Lord's going to do this. The Lord is leading us. Let the Lord and whatever God that you follow decide this between the two of them. And then the king of Ammon said he didn't listen. He paid no regard. So we're going to find out what happens tomorrow if he goes to war, and then what happens with that. All right, so that's it for today. If this has been a blessing to you, I want you to like it, hit the like button. Because all these these are things that push it out to other people. So I want you to like it. I want you to share the channel with as many other people as you know, and I want you to subscribe to it so it will pop up for you. Plus, the more subscriptions, the more it gets out, and the more people get to read it or listen to it, and so then they will read their Bibles. And most of all, I want you guys to keep reading. I'll see you next time.